So I'm going to begin by offering my personal opinion about abortion. And the best I can say about it is that it is a terrible choice to have to make. I believe that it ought to be a woman's right to make it, but I do not believe it should be taken lightly, nor that abortion should be considered a method of birth control. I value the potential lives of those not yet born so greatly that I also strongly support sex education, easy and affordable access to birth control, and planning for parenthood, so that this terrible choice is not one that many have to face. I also value personal freedom and feel just as strongly that we ought to guarantee a woman's right to choose whether she wishes to remain pregnant or not, up to a point. Although I do not consider all life sacred, not even all human life, I do hold great reverence for all of it, especially human life. This is so because sacred comes from an old French verb meaning to make holy or to consecrate. So it refers to nothing that is innately true about that which is consecrated, but refers only to the feelings and beliefs of those who consecrate it. This attitude then may vary from group to group or from person to person and is no more than a projection onto the sacred object of one's subjective experience or feelings about it, which again may indicate nothing that is objectively true about the object of worship itself. So, quick example, just because someone thinks a totem pole is God does not make it God. That worked. I guess I could have just said that. I complicate things so much. Nevertheless, reverence, I shall continue to complicate them. Reverence, on the other hand, comes from the Latin word reverere, meaning to stand in awe of. In English, its definition is to regard with deep respect and veneration. So this word then clearly says something about the projector rather than that which is projected onto, the subject rather than the object. That I hold great reverence for life, especially human life, says something about me, not about life itself. My feelings toward life, that is, may reflect nothing that is objectively true about it. I am simply a person who regards life with deep respect and veneration. So what does seem objectively true about life is that nature treats it with tremendous disregard. Firstly, there are far more prey animals than there are predators. Predators could not have evolved if this were not the case. Predators must continuously eat new prey animals throughout their entire lifespans, which means a one-to-one balance will not work in our world. A single owl, for example, eats thousands of mice over its lifetime. A little brown bat may consume as many as 4,500 insects per night. So in order for both predator and prey animals to coexist, not like the bumper sticker on the back of your car either, prey animals must vastly outnumber predators, which they do. And owls and bats, of course, are not the only predators prey animals must worry about. At any given time, there are 3 times the number of livestock animals alive on Earth than there are human beings. We are Earth's apex predator. So that's inference number 1. Whether we subjectively hold reverence for life as I do or consider it sacred, as those who call themselves pro-life claim they believe, objectively speaking, we live in a world that is extraordinarily hostile towards life. Inference number 2 is that we live in a world that aborts far more life, or at least the potential for life, than it could possibly bring to fruition. This is to guarantee that at least some potential lives, an incredibly small portion of them, will survive the brutalities of existence, at least long enough to produce more offspring. A couple of years ago, for example, a pair of robins built a nest on our porch. 4 hatchlings soon emerged. And at one point, a couple of crows attempted to raid that nest. They failed. But it ended up turning out that that nest was made large enough only to accommodate 2 growing chicks. 2 of them were eventually pushed out of the nest, plummeting to their deaths. Pushed out by their siblings, plummeting to their death. Now, if this is the norm, if it represents an average, it means that robins hatch roughly twice as many chicks as survive, if the crows don't get all of them. In nature, this is similar to most animals, those that lay dozens to thousands of eggs and those that give live birth to relatively large broods or litters. Over the course of their existence, plants and trees also produce far more seeds and fruit than will ever become plants, more new plants or trees. A single oak tree can produce 10 to 20 million acorns during its relatively long life, few of which grow into trees, partly because of all those innocent little prey animals that eat them. Likewise, a human male produces about 100 million sperm per ejaculation, but thankfully doesn't produce 100 million kids, or anywhere near it, nor does an infinitesimally small fraction of each woman's approximately 350,000, eggs result in a birth. Thank goodness. Like all creatures, humans also have an expiration date. We live long enough to bear and raise children, then we begin to grow old until we eventually succumb to heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, cancer, or some other fatal illness that gets us. Talk about feeling used. I could go on with this chain of thought, but my point is that no matter how sacred we consider life or how much we revere it, the reality is that nature wastes more life than it produces. Guarantees us only a short life of fear, predation, and an agonizing death for most creatures, and has assured that we're all going to die no matter how much we yearn to go on living. Bottom line, our attitudes about the abortion issue, along with those of a similar vein, like the death penalty or medically assisted suicide, are rooted in our subjective feelings as human beings, not in the minds of our gods, nor the objective moral truths that we project onto them. Of course, there's nothing wrong with approaching the world from a human perspective. That's the only perspective we can approach it from. But we ought to do so knowingly, rather than treating our perceptions, as if they are based on some sacred or absolute truth that we then wish everyone to agree with and adhere to. Still, those in the pro-life movement say that life is sacred and believe that they are acting on behalf of their Christian God by protecting the unborn from abortion. Yet there is nothing in their scriptures supporting this position. There are, on the contrary, stories in their scriptures in which God calls for his followers to kill everyone, every last man, woman, and child, and animal. Indeed, one of their most sacred stories, one that they tell their children as if it were a pleasant fairy tale, is the story of the flood, in which a genocidal God wipes out almost every person and every creature living on the planet. Nor is there anything among the teachings of Jesus that call for his followers to preserve life at all cost. He does not speak about creating, or I should say, he does speak about creating an abundant life for those who are alive, which he demonstrated by feeding the poor, healing the sick, embracing the outcast. He also said that there is no greater love than to give one's life for others, indicating that some things are more important than life. He certainly didn't make an idol of life, like today's pro-lifers do. In fact, Christianity's main symbol, the cross, sometimes with Jesus still hanging on it, represents his own such sacrifice and execution. And according to the Scripture, his death was itself a type of abortion. The Father sent his one and only Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. Where then is this contemporary dogmatism about abortion coming from? It is dogma that has no basis in the Christian Scripture or tradition. But as a former fundamentalist Christian myself, I believe it is compensation for a failure to adhere to Jesus' actual life-affirming example and teachings, and for Christianity's historic and continuing disregard for human welfare and human life. Jesus never spoke of the unborn, let alone indicated that our commitment to the welfare of others ends when we're outside the womb. He spoke about creating an abundant life and establishing heaven here on earth by caring for the welfare of those who have been born, by feeding them, by healing them, and including them. Everything they need not only to survive, but to thrive as human beings. If pro-life advocates genuinely care about life, why is it that they aren't as incensed about the lack of gun control laws in the U.S. as they are about wanting stricter abortion laws? Why is it okay to restrict a woman's right to choose whether she will remain pregnant, but not okay to restrict a man's right to own a military-style assault rifle, the kind frequently used to slaughter children in their classrooms, among others living on this side of the womb? Why is it okay to defund and shut down clinics that offer women's health care, prenatal care, contraception, sex education, and abortion for those who choose it, but not okay to take away those guns that are being used to kill people on our streets and in our homes and in our schools and in our businesses? Why is it okay for our partisan Supreme Court to turn the matter of abortion over to the states, but to insist the right to own weapons, unlike any weapon that ever existed when this country was founded, is a nationwide constitutional right? Where are they when it comes to protecting the lives of the living from the deadly and destructive consequences of global warming? An undeniable reality that they not only neglect but continue to deny, attempting to gaslight the rest of us, while also blocking us from doing anything meaningful to turn this lethal situation around. Where are they when the resulting fires burn down entire communities? Where are they when rivers of rain fall so quickly and unexpectedly that they drown our children asleep at summer camp? Where are they when the President of the United States forcibly separates children from their families and puts them in cold cages on a concrete floor? Where are they when 50% of those living in poverty on the streets of Gaza are children? Where are they when bombs drop on those streets, killing scores of innocent civilians, mostly children, in a ruthless act of vengeance and retribution? Where are they when it comes to ensuring the children born in this country have adequate food, shelter, clothing, and security? Where are they when it comes to ensuring they have adequate health care? To ensuring their parents can afford to bring them into this world? Where is their concern for life and for the living in such matters as these? A few years ago, I was dropping something off at a local Planned Parenthood and was approached by a so-called pro-life advocate in the parking lot, and after telling me that abortion is sin, I asked, "Then you must be in support of birth control, sex education, and planning for parenthood." "Well, we're for abstinence-only birth control," she said. Such contradiction, if not hypocrisy, is why I conclude their dogmatic obsession with abortion, which requires them to put no real skin in the game, is but a ruse to convince others, but mostly to fool themselves that they are good Christian people doing their religious duty to do what Jesus instructed: protect the lives of the unborn, which he never instructed. Rather, if Jesus were alive today, my guess is that he'd be risking his life on the streets of Gaza, or in Iran, or with worried parents who can't afford to take their sick child to a doctor, or with anyone else whose life and livelihood is being diminished by neglect, cruelty, and injustice. Born is not enough. If people want to follow Jesus, then do as Jesus did: feed the hungry, heal the sick, care for the poor, welcome the outcast. That's what it means to be pro-life. That's what it means to be pro-life. It's not about unborn American fetuses, but about the welfare of every living person on this planet and for the welfare of the planet itself, which sustains all life. Yet as I began, I also believe abortion is a terrible choice to have to make. I believe this is so because I care more about human potential than I do about human life. I'm going to repeat that again. I care more about human potential than I do about human life. I agree with social psychologist Erich Fromm, who said the whole meaning of life is to develop into the individual one potentially is, and that the duty to be alive is the same as the duty to become oneself. Not everyone gets to become oneself. Too many of us waste our lives either because we don't realize it's about finding and fulfilling some greater purpose and calling, or because our social systems are such that we must spend our lives pursuing our most basic needs, and we have little energy, little time, little resources left to concentrate on anything else. Aborting our potential, or maintaining social systems that require too many of us to abort such potential, that's the real sin. And this is another human reality human societies prefer not to face. Instead, we tell ourselves that life is about growing up, getting a job, and spending our lives working to pay our bills. That's often what becomes the meaning of our lives. But this shouldn't have to be. This kind of life only addresses the bottom half of Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, often inadequately at that. It doesn't promote the upper part of the pyramid, reflecting our need to fully unfold as individuals by finding love and finding belonging and self-esteem and purpose, and to strive not just to get by, but to find meaning beyond ourselves in service to others and in service to life. As a first principles thinker, I don't value life for the sake of life itself. I ask what life is for, and thus value it for its potential. And I consider it tragic if such potential is lost for any reason, due to premature death, poverty, oppression, depression, murder, war, the chronic struggle to make simple ends meet, and yes, because of abortion. In my mind, when a zygote is formed, human potential exists. And the loss of such potential at any phase of its existence is tragic. So I have this small baby Mickey Mouse here that is nearly 36 years old. And I bought it for our baby soon after we learned Peggy was pregnant with our first child. And I remember how excited we were to hear its heartbeat after just 6 weeks. A heart that was full of human potential. And this couple of days later, Peggy had a very painful miscarriage and had to be rushed to the emergency room for a DNC, which in clinical terms means to remove tissue from the uterus. And that little flicker of life, it turned out wasn't viable. Not any more than the millions of sperm and hundreds of thousands of eggs that missed their chance at the opportunity at life in favor of that failed pregnancy. But I still keep baby Mickey where I can see him every day as a reminder of the human potential that ended 36 years ago. Sometimes I pick him up and I wonder whose unforgettable heartbeat I heard so long ago might have become. And I also know that if that pregnancy had lasted, that the 2 children we do have would not have been born, and I can't imagine our life without them. Still, I sometimes wonder if multiverse theory is correct, if there is a world out there where our first child was born and is alive, and what kind of life they're living, and what kind of life I'm living because they're in it. I didn't get through that any better the second time than I did the first time. So I'm gonna come back and say a little bit more, but I want to play a song. This is from one of my newest AI albums, and regardless of what people feel about AI, I love it because it allows me to find another venue to discuss the things that I care about, and this is an issue I care a lot about. So, this is called Where Were Those Heroes Then? And you can see the lyrics on the screen, so if you have trouble hearing, you can understand what it's saying as well.
You turn that channel every time. future sold for gold. Where are these heroes then, when a mother chooses heat or to catch a cold? You raise your hands in judgment, but not to lift your neighbor up again. Tell me, where are these heroes then? Then.
Yeah, says it all, doesn't it? Born is not enough. That's where the pro-lifers get it wrong. Life isn't about being born, nor merely breathing and having a heartbeat. It's about becoming. It's about realizing our potential as individuals and as a species. And that's the point that I think many of us miss, regardless of what side of this issue we're on. Thank you.